this is Joe Corcoran. I'm the producer of Tony and Tina's Wedding, and I'll be talking to Rabbi Sol Solomon in the program Dave's Gone By on UNC Radio.
Oh, shalom, shalom, damn it, this is Rabbi Sol Solomon, the founder and spiritual leader of Temple Sons of Bitches in Great Neck, New York. And I am so excited to be here, back on the Dave's Gone By radio program of the air, doing something that I love to do, talking to people who are involved in the theater, Broadway as well as off-Broadway. Now, two of the most popular and longest-running off-Broadway shows of our time have included Late Nite Catechism, which I didn't see because it's all about Goyim, and Tony and Tina's Wedding, which, you've heard of it, you know, it's the Italian couple, they go, I know it's a church, so I have to bring my special Manischewitz sanitary napkins when I go, but still, what a popular show this has been. It went away for a while, but now Tony and Tina's Wedding is coming back to New York City. It's being produced by the guy who started it in the first place, Joe Corcoran, and he is with us in the neighborhood to talk about catechism, to talk about Tony and Tina's Wedding, to talk about some medical issues that he has, and if it involves medical issues, I can definitely relate. So welcome, shalom to the neighborhood, Joe Corcoran.
Thank you. It's nice to be here, Rabbi.
Good. You know, that's your cue. When I say welcome, you say hi. You answer me back on these things. Otherwise, it's going to be a very long conversation. But let me ask you, what convinced you, Joe Corcoran, to bring back Tony and Tina's Wedding at this time?
Well, you know, it was a 25-year anniversary. I just felt that it's been such a great part of the American, of the New York experience. You know, for so many years, so many people knew about the show, and we felt we wanted to really update the show, bring the show back with all of its characters, you know, give it a new look, and see if we could kind of kick it off, and see if we can get another 20 years out of it.
Mazel McClick. Now, when you first started doing Joseph, it was founded by this little company of improv people called Artificial Intelligence, which was new back then, actually. And this was, what, 1980s? How did you get involved? How did you hear about the show?
In 1985,
yeah.
I went to Hofstra University with most of these people, with a lot of these people who created the show, namely Mark Nasser, who played the original Tony.
Oh, right.
Nancy Casaro, who played the original Tina. A gentleman named Phil Rosenthal, who was the original priest, who then went on to create Everybody Loves Raymond. And we've had lots of alumni, you know, in The Sopranos and in television and doing all sorts of great work out there since they were original members of Tony and Tina's Wedding.
Sure, and in 1980, so...
Big family, you know, that it's such a big extended family now that where as the show is played, you know, all over the United States and tours and even abroad in Japan and Australia, that there's a big Tony and Tina extended family out there, and I just felt that I wanted to give it another little boost and see if we could keep it going for a few more years at least. Sure.
But during that 20-year run of the original production off-Broadway, you even had guest stars coming sometimes. Who were some of them?
Well, we did. We had Lee Mazzilli,
the New York Met. Oh my God, Lee Mazzilli. I haven't heard that name in 100 years. Yeah.
Yeah, he came in and played Tony for us for close to about 9 months.
What? How was he?
It was originally a few months, and then he decided to stay for a little bit longer.
Could he act? Was he good?
He was fantastic. He did great, and he got a lot of publicity.
Sure.
A lot of people wanted to come down and see him, and, you know, given the nature of our show where everybody's very approachable, you know, people could get up close and personal with him and get pictures with him, and, you know, I think it was a unique experience for theater goers to be so close to the star.
Who else? Who were some of the other guest people that you had?
We've had, you know, Vito Antuofermo, the world champion, middleweight champion boxer.
Whoa, you don't want to get too close to him, let me tell you.
No, matter of fact, he was at the show. He came to the show this weekend, Friday night. He was at the new version of Tony and Tina's Wedding in Times Square. But we've had people from the Howard Stern show. We had Stuttering John.
Oh, wow.
On the show. And
well, so when Stuttering John was in it, was it 5.5 hours long? Because every time he would try to do improv, he'd been like, but give me the rigatoni. I mean, what?
Yeah, he actually, once he gets comfortable, he doesn't stutter.
I know. I'm just teasing.
It was kind of fun the first meeting I had with him about it, and he was playing the best man, and the best man does a toast every night, and I just thought it would be hysterical if he would be stuttering through the toast. But it turned out that he got himself comfortable and he never stuttered.
Oh no! Yeah. Was everybody disappointed?
Not at all. Yeah, I know. I feel like I got ripped off.
That's right. That's
Stuttering John.
Oh my God! So these are people. Do you think you might have guest stars in this current reopened version of?
No question. As a matter of fact, we have Randy Finoli we've been talking to from Say Yes to the Dress.
Okay.
And we have George Brescia, who's like a celebrity stylist. He does a lot of the commentary for the Oscars and for the Tonys.
Okay.
The stylist. He goes on television. Another gentleman named Derek Warburton. There's another person like a celebrity stylist. These people do a lot of television.
Okay.
Whereas they'll come on and talk about the new spring styles, what people are wearing at certain events. They have private clients that they dress and they make, that
sure.
look nice. They're basically style consultants.
So take us back again. Take us backward in time again, Joe Corcoran. You're coming out of Hofstra, and you become, you should pardon the expression, a lawyer, right?
Not a lawyer, but I worked on Wall Street.
Wall Street, excuse me.
I got a job through some friends working on a trading desk on Wall Street.
So did you make a pile, and that allowed you to speculate in the theater?
I didn't make a pile, but I did have a lot of friends who worked in the business who had done very well, and my brother was
Dan Corcoran.
London at the time. That's right, Dan Corcoran.
He was what at the time?
He was working in London at the time.
London, okay.
Yeah, for a brokerage firm. These were all young guys. They were making really good money, and we actually raised all the initial money for the first show, all in London, in basically one night. It was only, the capitalization was only $115,000.
Wow, and just boom, everybody ponied up. They had it, they did it, and of course,
right, everybody went in for $10,000, and then we got to all the money, and we came back, and that was coincidentally that was the same 3 days after I returned home. Two of the gentlemen who invested in the show went down in that Pan Am 103 crash.
Oh my God.
Very tragic. But that was, to give you a perspective of how long ago that was.
Well, but also the fact that you were 30,000 down then, so you had to go back and get from other people.
Oh no, they already committed to it, and I'd known their families, so.
Oh wow.
Already in.
How long did you wait until after the funeral to say, hey, we really need to cash this check?
Oh no, actually I got the checks before I left. Everybody gave me the money before I left there.
By the way, I don't know if you did this, but certainly a show that was based on Tony and Tina was called Grandma Sylvia's Funeral. Were you involved in that?
No, I wasn't.
You don't have proprietary rights on Tony and Tina. Did you feel, what happens when you see another theater company or production house doing a show that might be taking away from you? I mean, were you angry about it? Was there anything you could do? Were you happy that improv was growing? How'd you feel?
Well, at first we got a little frustrated, and we just figured let's see if we could, if there was anything we could do about it to get them to stop. But coincidentally, when we went to look into it, we found out that we call them the rip-offs, because I think that they all followed our show. There was one in Boston called Joey Maria's Wedding that was playing in the Boston area, and somebody decided that they were going to do their own version of it. So I think they called it Joey Maria's or something like that. What happened was, once my lawyer did the research, he was able to find that there was a case that was pending right now in basically a copyright case where one ripoff was suing the other.
Oh, that's funny.
We even involved with it. So we basically decided to sit back and wait for the judge's decision. The judge ruled that there was not enough similarities in the script. You can't copyright a concept.
Right.
And that there weren't enough similarities in the script, and basically his ruling was that they needed to change certain characters in order to make it different from the original one, in order to have it changed, and then it would be okay. So with that, we just didn't. We decided it wasn't worth pursuing because just to spend that money to where people will just change the characters around didn't seem to.
Yeah, and nobody's heard, of whatever the hell they call their version. Nobody's heard of the knockoff. Everybody's heard of Tony and Tina's Wedding. And as a matter of fact, even now, off-Broadway, there have been 2 different musical comedies based on 50 Shades of Grey. And, they were probably jockeying back and forth in the courts, but if they're 2 different shows...
More than actually.
What, sorry? What?
No, there's two in New York. One's 50 Shades of Grey, the original musical, they call it.
Uh-huh.
Which I know it wasn't the original because there's others out there. But there's another one in New York that's running called Cuff Me.
Yes, Cuff Me, right.
Yeah, Cuff Me. So there's 2 of them. And then I know that there's one on the road, too, that's called Spank.
Good God.
That's the first one that I know of, that one out there. When it's done by Michael Mills and Mills Entertainment.
So they all have, I'm sure, different songs, different actors, same characters actually, but you can't. They're all different parodies, and they're all allowed to do what they do.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Because in a parody, you can really do anything, and it's not. You don't have any issue as long as you're doing a parody of it.
So, how long did it take you? Back when you raised that $130,000, whatever it was, to do the very first Tony and Tina, how long before you were able to pay everybody back?
But actually, it happened in a relatively very quick time, and probably about 12 to 14 weeks.
Wow.
Everybody was able to get paid back, which is unheard of now in this days.
Yeah, unless you have Daniel Craig and what's her name, yeah.
Expensive to put a show on.
Wow. And so... over the course, I'm not saying how much you personally took in, but over the course of 20 years, did the show make millions?
Yeah, it did.
Wow. Yeah. And it's just from New York, or does that also include, the touring and the sit-down productions elsewhere?
Touring, because, the original investors would receive also a percentage, from each of the other shows that, we basically licensed to other companies, even though I produced them. I produced many of them. I did all the major cities. I did Chicago and Boston and Los Angeles and San Francisco. So I did a lot of the major ones with local people. But each of those productions paid a royalty each week to, the original investors who were involved. So
wow,
they probably got about 100 times their money back. In the 25 years that.
So let's see, 100 times $10,000 is a lot of money. God bless them. God bless you. I'm sure they should send you a Christmas card every year with hearts and flowers and thank you.
Yeah, I know.
Now also...
It isn't much anymore.
It's like the ideal thing. You put in a little bit of money, put on a show that people like, that they go to, you pay back investors quickly, it runs for years, make millions of dollars, but even through that, were there any things that you did, any mistakes that you made as a producer early then that you wouldn't do again, that you corrected later on? Anything that you would have done differently?
Well, I did have the benefit of having a show that everybody loved. So, we were selling tickets right from the first day. And so I would say that I've made a lot of mistakes, over the course of the 20 years, but nothing that was damaging enough that it closed the show down.
Well, what was an example of a mistake that you made?
Well, just putting advertising and not getting, returns on it. We found out time and again, that to take ads in the New York Times had never changed our business.
Oh, so, what about even the ABC listing, or is that you have to be there?
We had to do ABCs back then. You had to do ABCs. People didn't realize that ABCs cost money.
That's right.
It was rather expensive to do ABCs, even for a small show like ours. But our ad budgets were very, very limited. I think we spent between $3,000 and $5,000 a week on advertising, which did not go very far at all. Basically, just bought us a couple of listings and an occasional ad here and there, and the mailings, and back then, now they do email blasts, but
sure.
Back then they did a lot of mailings, school mailings and stuff like that. So, every 8 weeks or so we would decide we want to do one of those mailings, and that would be a couple of $1,000. So, that would be included in our ed budget. We just didn't, the show just didn't have the margins because we had almost 30 people in an equity show.
Oh, that's right. Oh, it was equity. Wow. Wow. So, and also you're feeding everybody food. If people don't know Tony and Tina's wedding, the actual, you do the ceremony, the funny, then you go across to another place, and there's an actual reception where you meet the actors, they do their thing, but you're also having pasta and other stuff. I mean, so there's that cost.
Our audience is limited. Our audience, we were playing to about 160 people at that time. So, our break-even was probably like 80% capacity, which, had I known better, I wouldn't have done it, had I had any experience.
Really? Or you would have just served cheaper noodles?
I would have looked at those numbers and said, there's no way, that people are going to make their money back, with the high break-even point.
And yet, because you would get 95% houses, therefore suddenly you were paying back. So now you're still doing the show and people still get the food. Is it a bigger house? How many people do you fit now?
Well, we can seat up to 199 people in the current venue.
Okay, so that gives you a margin of 30 more potential tickets.
Yeah, it's still very, very. Again, we decided to do, what happened over the years, and other producers came in and they cut characters, they cut the church, they did things. I never did that. I actually ran the show for the first 17 years. Or so, 10 years in the village and then 7 years uptown, and then I decided to close it down. I give the show a rest for a while because, like I said, the margins were so small. When we had a bad week, we could lose $7,000 or $8,000, and a good week we would make $3,000. So it would be one big continual game of catch up, to try to just.
Well, if you stop serving ketchup, you would save some money there, too. Just a thought. But let me ask, was it during the recession? When did you stop Tony and Tina that first time?
Well, we've stopped, and then we've advertised last week, but I remember around 2000, let's say around 1999 or so, when I was deciding to give the show a break. And then some other producers, the Las Vegas producers, came in, and then they took the show and they produced it for a few more years. Oh,
so it did. That's right. It didn't feel like it ended that long ago. Okay, but then finally, even they said, "Okay, let's keep it quiet." For only 5 years, it's been gone.
It's been down. It's been down 4 or 5 years.
4 or 5 years. So now, but you figure it's time. The economy has come back a little bit. The people are interested. They're doing this sort of thing. The stuff like Awesome 80s Prom, which I hated, but that did very well for a while. People, I guess you're feeling, are in the mood to go out and do an interactive comedy show with food and characters and all that.
Yeah, we just felt, I like to think that this is like Tony and Tina is really a New York institution. And so I really wanted to take one more shot at doing a really fantastic production with all the characters and doing it the first-class way. Despite the fact that our margins are very tight as they were when we first started. Again, we are an equity show.
Oh, by the way, please remind everybody, where are you doing the two pieces of the show? What are the actual locations this time?
The ceremony happens at the Jackie Onassis School, which is actually the former high school for the performing arts, which is at 120 West 46th Street.
Oh my God! It still is a high school of the performing arts. They just renamed it.
Oh, actually, they moved. There was a plaque, the original one. Now it's the Jackie Onassis International School. It's still a New York City public school, but
it's not the famed school anymore. They moved.
Auditorium.
Right. Sorry?
The high school performing arts, I think, is LaGuardia right now, right?
I think so. Yeah, something like that. LaGuardia. Yeah. I didn't go
LaGuardia High School over by Lincoln Center.
Got it. So, but you're in the place that was that location, and then they moved to where?
Well, then the audience leaves there and all walks together down, walking west on 46th Street, through Times Square, walking down 1 block south to 45th, and then they make a right, and they make a left on Schubert Alley, and the whole audience walks through Schubert Alley with the cast. Every night they get lots of cheers from all the people waiting there waiting to stick it into Matilda, those that are having dinner at Junior's. So they've become quite known in even this short time in Times Square, just because of the walk through. And then right across the street, in between Carmine's and Sardi's, where the old New York Times, it was where the trucks pulled in.
Yeah.
Back to the New York Times, right? They've converted that to a few different restaurants. One being Guy's American Kitchen and Grill, which is Guy Fieri's restaurant.
Oh, okay.
Times Square.
And that's where you have the actual reception pot.
That's exactly right.
Wonderful. Well, and by the way, are you doing Tony and Tina? You don't do like an 8-show-a-week thing, because nobody's going to come out really on a Tuesday.
Right now we're doing 3 shows. We're going to be adding a 4th show, and then hopefully we're going to get it up to 6.
With God's help, exactly. And you're still an equity show again. You are doing equity.
Yes, we are.
Excellent. I mean, that isn't good to equity has insane rules. But speaking of which, I was going to ask the director this if I ever got to talk to him. The director is Tony Lauria.
Lauria, Lauria.
Any relation to Dan Lauria, the actor, or no?
No relation.
No relation.
Dan, he's been down to the show several times, and we have friends of friends, so we know Dan well, but no relation.
No relation to the director. But the director played one of the characters in Tony and Tina's Wedding in the previous incarnation, so that's how he knows the show really well. And why did you were the one who chose him to direct. Why him?
Well, because he's actually been doing our shows on the road now for the past 8 or 10 years. We get booked out by a booking agency named Mills Entertainment, and what his job is to go into a small town like Lakeland, Florida, or Scottsdale, Arizona, or wherever they have performing arts centers, and we partner with them. And basically, we bring 4 key people, and then he casts all of the other roles locally.
Oh, brilliant!
He goes in, he casts everybody, leaves them with the script, gives them a couple of assignments that they need to do, and then comes back 3 or 4 days before, only that, with the other 3 actors, and then he plays the singer in the show. Donnie Dolce character. We bring the Tony and Tina, and we bring the maitre d' with us. And then all the other roles are cast locally.
Very smart. And he's been dealing with that for almost a decade, so he's ready to take on the assignment of fully directing.
He's built a real network of people who really love and respect him. He knows how to treat people right. And, he's really earned my respect over the years, which is why that I wanted to work with him on this.
Now, let me ask you, are there certain rules, do's and don'ts, that all the actors have to know in dealing with the audience and doing the show? Because a lot of it is scripted, but there's also give and take and back and forth and tummeling with the audience. So are there a set of, 10 commandment rules that the actors have?
Well, one of them is to never break character. No matter what the audience tries to throw at you, you cannot, break your character. So that's really pretty much rule number 1.
Okay.
So, like if Vito Anafirmo at times, he would, I would catch him signing his autograph, Vito Anafirmo, when he was actually playing a role. So I had to remind him several times.
That he had to write, if he was going to sign an autograph, he had to write the character name rather than himself. Okay.
Exactly. But, I think that's like the golden rule with our show. And then the other one really big. There's not 10 of them, but there's, the other one basically is to make positive choices. Just remember that these people are your friends and your family, and that, given the choice of going negative or positive, we've always bound it in their heads to make the positive choice.
Make the positive choice. That's very hard for Jewish people to do, by the way, just so you know.
That's okay.
But Italians, maybe they can get away. Speaking of positive things and even religious-y things, we haven't even talked about Late Nite Catechism, the Mary Pat Donovan show. Now, that came after. You produced that after Tony and Tina was already running?
Well, yeah. Matter of fact, I opened Late Nite Catechism in New York. I took St. Luke's Church, which was They had a downstairs area. Now they have an actual theater in there.
Right.
They built a theater, but at the time we were looking to move the show into Midtown, they had like a soup kitchen down there during the day. So we kind of transformed that and started doing, into a theater at night. We came in and cleaned the place up. We painted it. We made it look nice. And we made a deal with the pastor. And we did Tony and Tina's wedding at 7 o'clock. And then right after Tony and Tina's wedding, people left. Then the audience for Late Nite Catechism came in.
Oh.
So I actually had 2 shows running there simultaneous now for a couple of years.
And they were both hits, and they were both very well received. I mean, that has become...
Well...
What?
Now it's St. Luke's Theater. Now they do a lot of different shows in there, and it's kind of a mess now.
Oh.
They're doing 5 different shows at the same time and different time slots, and
they're just trying to use the space as much as they can, and they know that most plays that they have in there can't sustain 8 shows a week or 7 of the same play. So they're just going to use it as much as they can with all that. I understand why they're doing what they're doing, but half the time you never know what the hell's playing there when you walk in. So...
Well, I have so many posters around, and it's like this big fat gay wedding.
Right. Well, but that's another thing. I think that's a regular play. It isn't interactive like Tony and Tina.
Well, it is interactive, but people somehow confuse it, because when you look at the poster, there's a lot of characters in it. So if all those characters were actually in the play, I would imagine they would have to be on the poster, but it looks... I think people could confuse it.
I guess they could. I mean, some of the matinee ladies aren't the brightest bulbs in the bunch. And
That's right.
They'll walk into Matilda thinking it's Violet, that sort of thing. So, now a couple of other things that I want to talk to Joe Corcoran, the producer, about. You are an off-Broadway producer. But a few years ago on this radio program, Dave, the host of the show, talked to a playwright named Michael Weller. And way back when, they were talking about, Weller wrote these plays, he wrote Moon Children, and he was also very excited, very involved in a big musical based on the book and the movie Dr. Zhivago. And he was saying, we're trying to get that to Broadway, it happened, It had already been in the pipeline for years, and now this interview was a few years ago. I see that you're involved in Dr. Zhivago. What's happening?
Well, it opened up in La Jolla, California, where they did their initial run. A lot of shows developed there. The Des McAnuff was the artistic director. So he's been developing Dr. Zhivago and had done readings there, and Page to Stage was their kind of program, and they decide which ones that they like, and the music. Lucy Simon wrote the music.
Okay.
Michael Weller did the book, of course. Amy Powers did the lyrics. What happened was that the idea was to bring the show directly from La Jolla to Broadway. And at the time, I guess, the theater owners came out and they didn't feel that the show was quite ready. So we had, more that there wasn't a theater available. We're not really exactly sure, but the fact of the matter is that we were not offered a theater to come into New York. So at that point, we started to look into other situations, and like the opportunity, the possibility of opening in London next or wherever. And we teamed up with a partner, a guy named John Frost, himself Frosty, in Sydney, Australia. He loved the idea of doing the show, and so we actually did a 3-city tour of Sydney, Brisbane, and Melbourne that lasted close to a year in Australia.
Oh, okay.
Once that ended, then they did another 6 months or so in Korea, in Korean.
I hope it was South Korea.
Yes, of course.
I know, yeah.
South Korea, yes.
So what are the Broadway prospects, though, for Dr. Zhivago at this point?
Oh, occasionally we have meetings and talk about looking at trying to line up a star, trying to figure out when a theater is available. I mean, right now we're looking at the possibility of opening in 2015, sometime in 2015. Yeah.
Let me ask you, though, your experience in producing has been, to this point, doing something like Tony and Tina's Wedding, where your initial capitalization was $130,000 to get it up, and then Late Nite Catechism, which was probably less, to even do that. How do you go from that to jumping into what must be, if it's Dr. Zhivago, your capital has to be somewhere between $10 and $15 million.
That's right. It was actually $8 million in Australia.
Okay.
Which we can do things a lot cheaper there, and there's also great talent. They had a star. We had a star down there named Anthony Warlow.
I've heard of him. I don't know why. Okay.
He's a big recording artist. He's got albums, and he's a recording star in Australia, and he does London, and he does other parts of the world. He's not really known in the United States, although he did come and play Daddy Warbucks and Annie.
Right.
Did so many times.
Yes. Okay. That's what happened.
On Broadway.
Yeah. Okay. That's why I heard of him.
Born in Zhivago, and so he had a big following. So the show actually did very, very well in Australia.
Good, thank God. But I'm even talking about, from your perspective as a producer, the difference between getting the actors, hiring a director, cleaning up a room, and getting a caterer, and putting on Tony and Tina's wedding, versus doing an Australian tour or a Broadway opening of a giant, full-scale musical like Dr. Zhivago. Is it very different, or is it still a lot of paperwork?
It's very different. Really, and Broadway producers really are fundraisers.
Right.
Basically, some more experienced than others, but they're usually a collection of people that have made a lot of money in other businesses that now have, they come in and write a check themselves, and they have a lot of very wealthy friends. And they're able to, put large, bunches of money together. So in a big show like that, you may have 5 or 6 or 7, general partners.
Right.
6 general partners that are responsible for bringing in, their share of the capitalization. And then you'll have lots of other co-producers, associate producers, other people, but all of those people being basically just fundraisers. They don't, the general partners would sit at a table and almost be like a board of directors and decide, like, here's what's going to happen, what are we going to do, when should we open, should we sign this person, that kind of a thing, but the general manager that they hire is the person who really runs the show. They deal with the day-to-day operation of the show, but, it's good to have some well-known producers because they can help you secure a theater. The theater owners, such as the Schuberts, they want to know who the producers are because they want to know that they're going to be able to capitalize it. And then if the show needs money, that they're going to write it, somebody can write a check. So really on Broadway, it's mostly just it's a fundraising. So
how do you fit into the producing team of Zhivago? You're not the lead producer, or are you?
I'm not the lead producer. I'm one of the. I'm going to be. When it comes to Broadway, I'll be one of the general partners.
Okay. Is that what you
will have my share of the capitalization that I'll be responsible for raising?
Is that what you did on Jesus Christ Superstar? You should probably express in Jesus Christ, but I have to say it. Well, it came from Canada a couple of years ago.
That's right.
Now,
it came from Stratford, yeah, and then it went to La Jolla, and then it came to Broadway.
And Broadway. Now, that was not it was a huge hit in Stratford. It came to Broadway, did not do so well. Were you surprised at that? Were there mistakes made?
I was, it just, I really just thought the brand and the fact that it hadn't been gone, it's the most produced musical ever in the history of the business, and I just felt that there's, every couple of years there's a market for people who really want to see it. So, I was wrong about it. Obviously the show only ran a couple of months before it closed, but it was a good production. In retrospect, I think maybe if we had some stars in there, we could have done better. Ricky Martin was in Evita, which I didn't think was very good at all, but people seemed to be interested in seeing that production because Ricky Martin was in it. So, in retrospect, I think that if we maybe had a star, that things could have been different. Okay. But,
that's the thing about even producing for many years. You can never tell. If
exactly
hindsight
right. Exactly
is a wonderful thing. Now, speaking of, or the opposite of hindsight is foresight, And you, amazingly enough, we didn't even get to this, and I didn't even mention it in the introduction, is that you founded one of the major, most important websites in modern theater, and theater going, and theater news, and theater ticket sales. What made you think back then that Theater Mania, which you founded, could go head-to-head with the big monster at the time, Playbill?
Well, it was interesting. This has happened right around 1998, 1999, when the Internet was really just starting to get a little bit of traction, and, we were really looking at it from our own standpoint for what we could do with Tony and Tina's wedding. And, Darren Sussman, who's about 10 years my junior, was a good friend of my brother's in high school, and he had worked at a record company called Shawnee Records.
Oh, yes, of course.
And they, the record industry is basically leap years ahead of the theater as far as, trying new things for marketing and whatnot. And they were doing things on the Internet that nobody in the theater was doing. So he came in, he had a perspective and had a little bit of experience with that. And we thought, he worked in my office now. I gave him a desk and said, help me get Tony and Tina to sell tickets online. And so we were the first really to set up our own little ticketing thing where we can execute tickets online. And at the same time, we went around to companies like AOL and to NBC and to Yahoo and basically offered them theater content, but just Tony and Tina's wedding. So there was a little window in time when if you clicked on theater or you searched theater on AOL, the only thing that would come up would be Tony and Tina's wedding.
Well, that's funny.
Yeah, so we soon realized that there was a real need for this for the whole business. So we thought, let's start with the listings and giving shows. People. When we did the listings and realized there were 400 shows running in New York.
Right.
People only think that the ones that are listed in the ABCs are the only ones that are actually running. But back in those days, I don't know if you remember, but people used to give you a postcard and say, "Come to my show," and then you would call the number, and then you would leave a number on a telephone line to make a reservation.
Yes.
So, what we thought to do is this was the low-lying fruit as far as we were concerned. Create a general admission ticketing system, and approach all of these people and let them set up a website address and have them drive people to their website where they can buy tickets. And so we, actually started signing up venues to be able to sell their tickets online. Really were the first ones to do that because, when people bought a $15 ticket, you weren't going to pay a $6 service charge from telecharge.
Right, exactly. Ridiculous.
Yeah, so we worked it out where it was, no more than 10% of the ticket price. So people would pay $1.50 on it, and, it became very popular. We got very popular within the off-Broadway community, and that was one of the things that made us grow. And in addition to having listings for everything, because, a small off-Broadway show, there was really no place for it to be listed. And if they weren't running long enough, even the Village Voice wouldn't list them. We kind of really filled the void for a lot of the shows on the off-Broadway level. And, we became the go-to place for all of these shows.
And that's how you guys survived against the big juggernaut that Playbill became for a while. Because they were dealing with Broadway, of course, and all of that, and trying to do a bit of off-Broadway and whatever they could beyond it. But you were the guy selling, people wanted to buy tickets for off-Broadway, they went to you. And they
could search us. They can go to our site and they can find the show that they were looking for listed, where they wouldn't be able to find it anywhere else.
So why didn't you stay with Theater Mania? Why did you leave, ultimately?
I stayed there for about 5 years. I was the one who created the Gold Club, and I just really, at that time, just felt like I wanted to get back to producing. Everybody was working on less money, and we were working a long time, and it just felt like it was the time for me to I had set the Gold Club up, which is still thriving. It's an audience development program that helps put bodies into seats, free.
Right.
Whether they be Broadway shows or off-Broadway shows. And, we've got a lot of the smaller off-Broadway shows that we had in the Gold Club, and this was a way for them all to get exposed.
Yes, yes.
Like people go read about and say, oh, that sounds interesting. They wouldn't have known about it otherwise.
Now we are concluding our delightful chat with the producer, Joe Corcoran. I want to remind everybody, of course, that the new version, it's slightly updated, but it's Tony and Tina's Wedding. It's playing and opening this weekend right here, off-Broadway at, you said, first of all, it was the old Fame School. What was the address again?
High School for the Performing Arts, where Fame, the movie, was based on. Up 2 Times Square, to Guy's American Kitchen and Bar.
Guy's American Kitchen and Bar is where the party takes place afterwards, as it were. Now you should feel every day of your life in a party spirit, Joe Corcoran, because a couple of years ago, you were at death's door. And I did want to ask about this. What happened to you?
Well, my whole family moved out to California. My wife was offered a scholarship to be in a writing program. They only bring in 2 people from the California Institute of the Arts. So it was a great opportunity for her, and our whole family moved out to California together, including my children. We put them in schools in Los Angeles, and the plan was to stay out there for 2 years. But I wasn't out there long when I started to feel difficulty swallowing, started getting night sweats, and I started getting symptoms of being sick. I went to the doctor, and they couldn't seem to figure out what was going on. I'd gone there 3 times, and he wouldn't give me medication. I knew something was wrong. I went to a throat specialist, and they put a probe down my throat, and they noticed that there was a mass that they could see.
Oh.
They didn't diagnose it at that time, but I have a lot of cousins and family that are in the medical field. One being a nurse at a big hospital at Sloan Kettering, and she said, please come back here and we'll get you tested and whatnot. And they went through a whole series. They didn't know, because this mass was right around my sternum, close to my neck. They really weren't sure what it was, whether it was lymphoma, whether it was throat cancer, but then, after they did a full biopsy, I went back to New York. My family stayed to finish out the rest of the semester. There was only a few weeks left. Right around Thanksgiving is when I got diagnosed. And they ran through a whole series of tests, and they found that I had lung cancer.
Did you smoke ever?
No, I did a little bit from between 30 and 40 years old, but on and off, and never after 40. But it was like I would smoke a year or 2 and then stop for a year and stop. But my doctor told me clearly that this was not a smoking-related thing. It was outside of my lung. My lung was perfect. My lungs were perfectly clear. And I was much too young, but I would have had to smoke many packs a day over a period of years in order for it to have been caused by that. He made me feel better that I didn't self-inflict it, But the fact of the matter is that because it was in the thoracic area, it was labeled as lung cancer.
And so did they cut it out, and was this?
No, I was young and strong, and so they recommended. I did 7 weeks of 5 days a week of radiation, and then I did three stints of chemotherapy, where I went on for a week and then stopped for a week, and then went on for another week, stopped for a week, and then I did one more stint, and that was pretty intense. But I had my wife set up a blog for me called Joe's Journey.
All right, I remember this. Yes.
It developed a really big following, and lots of people were coming on. I was getting prayers from everywhere, and because of the traffic, people overseas were writing me notes. So I was incredibly blessed. I was very lucky. It's just now 5 years that I've just passed the 5-year mark that I'm still cancer free. So
Mazel, that's the big one. 5 years
is
yeah. Oh, mit Mazel, mit Glück, that's wonderful. That I'm very, very happy to hear that you are, and you've hit that the landmark of saying, 5 years. Still means you have to get tested, but it's a nice...
Of course, matter of fact, I have a scan coming up like the next week or two, yearly now. I was doing it every 3 months and then 6 months, and now now they check me once a year.
But
I've got the best care, the best care available. I'm very fortunate to have been at Sloan Kettering with a great doctor.
Sure.
And took very good care of me.
Was the chemo that much worse than the radiation to endure?
I mean, it was a combination of the two. It really was. I mean, with chemo, you lose your hair. You get nauseous. Radiation too. I mean, that was. You also have those kind of symptoms, but I was very lucky. I was still able to eat through most of it. It wasn't until really like the very end where I didn't have any appetite.
And did they have to tube you, or you just didn't eat?
No, I just had some soup.
Huh.
You know what I mean? I had the supplements, the Splendor and whatnot, and aside from that, I didn't eat. But it was literally just, probably a week to 2 weeks. I mean, at the very, very end, because they do say that, the treatments are cumulative.
Right.
It starts to become more and more an effect on your body as time goes on. So, but I was very lucky that at least the first 5.5 weeks or so, that I was still able to eat, and I was friends were taking me out all the time and eating steaks. And
oh wow! Oh, you really eat?
I was really eating. The doctor said there will come a time when you're not going to want to, so build up your strength and eat everything that you can right now. I had a list. I had a big social calendar. Lots of friends were coming in and taking me to dinner. They probably thought that was going to be the last supper they would have,
but certainly not. Certainly not. It's been 5 years and counting, and everybody hoping for 5, 10, 15, 100 years for the play that you are producing once again, off-Broadway, Tony and Tina's Wedding. I do want to wish you much more success, even more success than you've already had with that show. And also if you end up bringing Late Nite Catechism back as well, couldn't hurt. Or if you ever want to do a show with me, we'll talk. Joe Corcoran.
Hey, okay.
Sounds good. Joe Corcoran, it has been a delight having you in the neighborhood. Thank you so much and best of luck. Shalom to you.
Thank you so much, Rabbi.